The United States has the worst coronavirus response in the world right now. We have the most cases, over 3 million, and the most deaths, more than 130,000. And that's not just because we currently have one of the worst presidents in our country's history who doesn't seem to care about containing the virus, but also because we have one of the worst political parties in power in the entire democratic world. The Republican Party, the party of Roger Stone and Donald Trump, by a bunch of metrics, is off on an island all its own. It is further right than the vast majority of conservative parties in Western Europe and Canada. It is further right than parties considered to be extreme in Europe. For example, for years, it has been the lone major conservative party across the democratic world to deny the science of climate change. But now, on this evening in which the president has pardoned his criminal associate, now all of the Republican Party's most dangerous pathologies have come to fruition with Donald Trump amidst this pandemic. Because it's not just Donald Trump. It is a mistake to put it solely on Donald Trump. Look at what the entire party from top to bottom is doing during this crisis. Now, to be clear, it is a very difficult problem. We say that every night. It's a difficult governing problem for everyone. And there have been many Democratic officials who have made truly massive mistakes. Mayor Bill de Blasio, a Democrat, waited too long to close down New York City, and it cost lives. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo made a fatefully terrible decision to send coronavirus patients to nursing homes. And there have been Republicans who've done a pretty good job. Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. But on the whole, as an entity, the Republican Party, the party of Roger Stone and Donald Trump, is an irredeemable disaster. Look at their governors. In Arizona, Governor Doug Ducey originally blocked local officials from mandating masks. He was accused of manipulating the data in his state to reopen the state too quickly, and now Arizona has one of the worst outbreaks in the country. The governor's getting called out in the front page of the local newspaper for his lack of action. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott did much of the same thing. He said local officials could not punish people for not wearing masks, and he rushed to reopen. And now Texas is dealing with a massive outbreak, and Governor Abbott is taking the heat. In Mississippi, Governor Tate Reeves has been reluctant to put a statewide mask ordinance in place, and now his state is dealing with a mess. Their health system is overburdened, and Governor Reeves finally just ordered a mask mandate after about a sixth of the state's legislators contracted the virus, because the heavily Republican body insisted on working in person at the Capitol without masks in that kind of proximity. That's just a small portion of what's going on in states run by Republicans. And while the country is in the midst of a once-in-a-century calamity, affecting everything from public health, the economy, to the social fabric of the nation, the Republican senators representing their constituents in Washington are pretending like they're full-time tweeters, or right-wing talk radio hosts, or some dude somewhere with a cool new podcast, or just actively working to make life harder for people and make things easier for the virus. In the state of Missouri, where they set a record for new cases just now and just had a huge coronavirus outbreak at a summer camp, you may wonder what the new young senator from that state who is a rising star in the party is up to amidst this once-in-a-century calamity. I'll tell you, he's fighting with the NBA, sending a strongly worded letter to Commissioner Adam Silver about how they're kowtowing to China with new rules about player jerseys. Senator Josh Hawley also took the time today to blow up an ESPN reporter who sent him a rude email in response to that letter. In Texas, a state that has hit a record with coronavirus deaths, topping 3,000, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the darling of the conservative movement who wants to be president someday, he's busy hosting his own podcast, tweeting about Goya Foods, and fighting with a Harvard law professor on Twitter because he didn't like the way he talked about White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. All the while, his constituents right now are dying in their homes in record numbers because the ambulances can't get to them fast enough. And then there's his fellow Texan Congressman Dan Crenshaw, also a new young rising star on the right. A month ago, he was tone policing people who were warning about the virus, complaining about fear-mongering from a local county official who was warning about the coming disaster as the virus spread. The congressman said, "We have enormous hospital capacity. We can do this." That's what's happening in their state. That's how Republicans in that state are reacting. And then there's Senator Chuck Grassley, widely seen as a kind of Republican elder statesman. The octogenarian is wisely planning to skip the in-person COVID party Donald Trump is still planning to throw in Jacksonville, Florida next month. But yesterday he was whining about the Big Ten's decision to move to a conference-only model for all fall sports to limit traveling and packing thousands of people into stadiums. And as all this is happening, the president and this party continue their insane fight against masks at the grassroots and cultural level. It sees the whole party and political movement. It's maybe the biggest impediment right now to American public health and also to Donald Trump's reelection fortunes. Like last week when Texas Governor Greg Abbott finally did an about-face, because it got so bad in Texas, it is so bad in Texas, he told Texans they have to put a piece of cloth over their face, they have to wear masks in a last desperate attempt to save the state's economy and hospital system, and most importantly, save Texan lives. Well, now Greg Abbott is dealing with a full-fledged revolt from the grassroots of the Texas Republican Party, as county after county parties pass formal censure resolutions condemning the governor's response to the pandemic. That's the same Texas Republican Party, you may remember, that until the mayor canceled it earlier this week was insisting on holding their own in-person convention with 6,000 people in Houston later this summer. They wanted to throw a COVID party in Houston in the midst of the worst outbreak the city has seen. This is the Republican Party, the party of Donald Trump and Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and Roger Stone. This party is intellectually bankrupt. It is entirely unable to meet the moment. It has now given us, let's be clear, 2 successive presidencies that have brought the country to its knees. It is so corroded, so desiccated, so dangerous, it will revolt against one of its own members when they do something right to fight the plague to save lives. It is becoming a pro-COVID party before our eyes. And remember, it is more than Donald Trump. It's the entire party.
Someday soon, the time of Trump will pass. This circus of incompetence, corruption, and cruelty will end. When it does, the men and women in Trump's Republican Party will come to you, telling you they can repair the damage he's done. They'll beg you to forget their votes to exonerate Trump from his crimes, ask you to forgive their silence, their cowardice, and their betrayals as Trump wrecked this nation.
And almost on cue, Lindsey Graham, who said that Donald Trump was a kook, he was a racist, and now he's Donald Trump's golfing buddy. Today, he tweeted Donald Trump should pardon Roger Stone. That would be okay with him as chair of the Judiciary Committee because he's a man in his 70s, a nonviolent first-time offense. Of course, that doesn't apply to the thousands of others of federal prisoners who fit in that category because there's no difference between Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump and Roger Stone. It's all the same.